Hi guys, how you doing? Before we begin, I just want to let you know that I just started a Discord server where we can just discuss pop culture and stuff. If you can want to ask me questions and like my opinions on certain movies, or I can ask you and stuff, if we can just have a civil discussion, or at least I hope it'll be civil, and it'll just be a fun place to talk, you know? And if you want to read my thoughts on movies in general that are completely unfiltered, I have a letterboxd account. Both of these things are in the description below. With that out of the way, enjoy the video.
Man, I cannot wait to find out what happened to Luke, Han, and Leia after the Return of the Jedi. Episode 1? Episode 1? Does that mean this story's going backwards literally and figuratively?
Do you know how much hype there was for this movie? From everything I've heard, it was insanely high, like Avengers Endgame level high. Meaning, Star Wars fans were most likely trying to do all the research they could on those old computers before this even came out, which means they knew this was a prequel. The idea of going back to see Darth Vader's backstory had been floating around for a while. And also the fact that the original trilogy was already called episodes 4 through 6. All that to say, no one was surprised to see that this movie was called episode 1.
Also, reading.
Sitting the opening crawl. That's worth a few extra.
Also, I didn't read any of that let alone comprehend it.
So, you're just straight up admitting that you're not paying attention to this movie?
A New Hope's first scene, Battle of Vader overtaking Leia's ship. Empire's first scene, Hoth battle. Return of the Jedi's first scene, Tatooine rescue. But this movie's first scene, political ambassadors part of an envoy to talk about trade blockades.
This logic doesn't work at all. At first, it seems like you're saying it's a sin because the movie didn't start with action, and you back that up by bringing up A New Hope, which did indeed begin with an exciting action sequence. But then you brought up the Hoth battle and Tatooine rescue for Empire and Jedi, except both of these weren't the first scenes of their respective movies, which makes it sound like when you say first scene, you mean the first 30 or so minutes. And if that's the case, then this criticism of the Phantom Menace doesn't make sense, because the negotiations that were meant to get rid of the Trade Federation never even took place, and then the action immediately starts as Newt Gunray tries to kill the Jedi, and they speed up the process of taking over Naboo by sending droids down there to kidnap the Queen. So this opening is actually way more action-packed than you're implying.
Funny, since the days of Episode 4, which is technically after this movie's events, how much extra technology this era has over its successor.
Well, this is before the Empire took over and made things bad in the galaxy. It makes sense that things would look a lot better before that.
This way, please.
When our high-ranking political guests have to walk at the slow-ass pace of a droid like this, maybe we've taken the robot workers concept too far.
Do you see how fast TC-14 is moving? This sin only works if you played LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. At least she wasn't as slow as Yoda without his lightsaber.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Come with me if you want to live! Also, Liam Neeson isn't killing anyone in this scene.
2 arbitrary movie references.
Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
What? What was wrong with that line? I don't even know how to respond to that because he didn't explain why it was bad. I know this video came out in 2015, back when the prequels were mostly hated, but that's no excuse to just not explain sins.
The ambassadors are Jedi Knights, I believe.
Why would the Chancellor send obvious Jedi to the Trade Federation when it's pretty obvious they would never agree to enter the same room with them? Sending Jedi to something like this is almost like declaring war. At least make them not dress like Jedi so it can be a surprise.
Because they want to get rid of this blockade over Naboo. At this point in the timeline, the Jedi serve the Republic, and they want to help prevent conflicts from getting any worse. You're also forgetting that nobody from the Republic, except Palpatine, even knows that the Trade Federation made a deal with the Sith. They thought this matter would be resolved fairly quickly.
Can you send gas to just one room when you feed it into the air conditioning system? Or was this room created by Spectre to execute people you don't like on a whim?
Isn't this a spaceship that is way more advanced than anything we have in the modern day? You don't think they have ways to close off vents in other rooms?
Check it out, Corporal. We'll cover you.
Robot soldiers have corporals?
Yes. I mean, do you know how smart AI is in this universe? Honestly, I'm surprised the robot uprising hasn't happened yet.
Here's your action in a nutshell. Jedi mowing down mindless minions, making a mockery of middling mechanisms.
And that's exactly what makes the Jedi cool. Isn't this what we hoped they'd be when Obi-Wan talked about them in the original trilogy?
Why not just do that for the whole army?
Did you see how many battle droids there were? Jedi are not that OP, and since this is a George Lucas movie, I'm specifically talking about his version of the Jedi. If this were a Disney Star Wars movie, they'd be able to do that no problem.
They are still coming through. This is impossible!
This guy doesn't understand what impossible means, or Jedi.
The irony of this sin is too much. We are only in the first movie chronologically, and I already feel like you don't understand the Jedi.
Master, destroy us! This movie suddenly becomes like a video game where the bad guys send new enemies for the hero to fight, but just 2 of them so the game doesn't get too challenging too fast.
Dude, these droidicas are super effective. They have force fields that are nearly impenetrable, and they present a real challenge to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, forcing them to perform a force power that we only see one time and never again for some reason.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing: invasion.
What? Do you not know about asteroids and other space anomalies? Are communications always perfect for you assholes?
Jeremy, they are being surrounded by a blockade that wants to take over the planet, and the Queen even accused them of going too far. After that, they tried to talk to Senator Palpatine, and the communications conveniently went out. I think this guy made the right assumption.
The Senate would revoke their trade franchise, and they'd be finished.
You're still talking about this? Why didn't this movie start off with Jedi doing real Jedi things with the political theater firmly in the background? Who gives a about this stuff?
What do you mean by Jedi doing real Jedi things? Are you saying they should have attacked first, asked questions later? Because if that's the case, you have completely misunderstood what they are all about. Let's look at the movie that is widely considered the best film in the series and listen to what Yoda has to say about that.
A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
But I will condone this hairdo I'm sporting, which surely cost gobs of government dollars, but whatever.
Oh, so it's not just a nostalgia critic that makes fun of this hairdo? It's literally the most iconic costume from this film. Okay, maybe second most behind Darth Maul.
I'm guessing in 2019, George Lucas will want to add some more lizards to this shot so that it will finally be complete.
No, instead what he'll do in 2019 is add Greedo saying McClunky right before Han shoots him.
This is basically Jurassic Avatar.
Cool. 2 more arbitrary movie references.
Glad we could see the camera follow this chunk of sprites falling to the ground to add to our enjoyment.
Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche.
I think this movie's discount Dagobah scene was so cheap it might as well be from Spaceballs.
Did Jeremy just call Naboo discount Dagobah? I don't know, maybe I'm biased because Naboo's my favorite Star Wars planet, but that just feels wrong.
Jedi can only go underwater via the help of some they stole from Q at MI6.
Are you suggesting Jedi should use the Force to breathe underwater? When has that ever been established in any of the movies?
A droid army is about to attack the Naboo. We must warn them.
We shall no like the Naboo.
Wait, I thought Naboo was the name of the planet.
And it's also the name of the humans who live in Theed Palace. I mean, they are kind of the dominant species on this planet, especially since Boss Nass admits no one even knows about the Gungans.
The speediest way to the Naboo 'tis going through the planet core.
This place is basically Earth, right? The planet core isn't going to be ridiculously hot or anything? Okay.
The fact that this planet has an advanced alien society with an entire underwater city kind of makes me think that this planet is different from Earth. But who am I kidding? That's just common sense.
Also, the whole reason the clone army came down to Naboo was to fight the people here, but they decided to land on the other side of the planet? F***ing why? Is it so we could see Star Wars turn into Finding Nemo before Finding Nemo existed?
I'll admit, I'm not entirely sure why they landed so far away too, but what I'm more bothered by is the fact that you call the battle droids Clone Army. I think you got your Star Wars lore mixed up.
He owes me what you call a life debt. Your gods demand that his life belongs to me now.
I know this because I know everything about your culture I just learned existed 5 minutes ago. I mean, seriously, he just had this exchange with Obi-Wan.
Master, what's a bongo?
A transport, I hope.
But now he's suddenly an expert on Gungan law. Get the out of here.
That's because after Qui-Gon saved Jar Jar, Jar Jar told him that he was indebted to Qui-Gon, even saying that his gods demand it.
Now get out of here.
No, Mr. Stay. Mr. called Jar Jar Binks. Mr. Your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Oh, but it is. It is demanded by the gods, it is.
You know, some folks say Lucas got bogged down in his world creation with the prequels, and those people are onto something and not entirely wrong.
Actually, they are wrong. The world building and planet design in these movies are one of the best parts of the entire trilogy, and one of the reasons I consider them better than the sequel trilogy. Like, seriously, the planets in those movies were mostly really boring.
20,000 Jedi under the sea.
Arbitrary book reference.
A big thing that ate a smaller thing gets eaten by an even bigger thing cliche.
Which Qui-Gon straight up acknowledges when he says,
There's always a bigger fish.
You didn't tell him about the missing Jedi.
No need to report that to him until we have something to report.
And obviously, the reigning Sith Lord can't sense Jedi activity on his own, so we're gravy, baby.
Here's the first example that I'll bring up in this entire saga. Jeremy seems to think the Force will just always tell Jedi or Sith stuff, but to quote Han Solo,
That's not how the Force works.
and even if Palpatine did sense them, what does he care? I'm pretty sure he wants Queen Amidala to come to Coruscant so she can make him Chancellor of the Republic, and the Jedi help her with that.
Where is it going?
Don't worry. The Force will guide us.
The Force also guided you to nearly getting eaten by a gooberfish just a second ago. Why do we trust this Force anyway?
This dumb sentence. And since earlier Jeremy didn't bother explaining his sin, I'm not going to either.
Viceroy, we have captured the Queen.
Victory!
Wait, they captured the Queen without a fight? That's not so much a victory as it is a forfeit.
No, it's still a victory. They captured a queen who's in charge of the planet they want to rule.
This is actually fake Queen Amidala, played by Keira Knightley. And this trailing servant is actually Natalie Portman, the real queen, which you only really notice on your second or third viewing. But my question is, what the f*** are you doing watching this a second or third time?
My question is, why is this a sin? An amazing attention to detail is something wrong with this movie? Or is the sin that you wanted to ask, why would people rewatch this film? If so, now I feel attacked.
These birds are flying to join the birdemic. I'll let you debate which movie is better.
Arbitrary movie reference.
You could argue that it's a huge coincidence the two Jedi show up in Naboo at the same time the Queen is being whisked away and at the same spot. But someone's just going to show up in the comments schooling you on midichlorians, so why bother?
Except midichlorians are not the Force. That's a common misconception about them that I wish more people would ignore. Qui-Gon quite literally explains that they are microscopic life forms that reside in every living body, and they help one communicate with the Force. So midichlorians have nothing to do with this coincidence.
They need her to sign a treaty to make this invasion of theirs legal. They can't afford to kill her.
What? They need her to sign a treaty to make the invasion of her home planet legal?
Yes, they do. If you were actually paying attention to this movie like you should, you would have noticed that the Trade Federation is doing this illegally, and they need approval from the Queen so they can rule the planet freely. If that doesn't happen, then they're in big doo-doo this time. I am not sorry for saying that.
There's the blockade.
One ship is going to attempt to go through a planetary blockade with the Queen in tow. In other news, I just beat LeBron James one-on-one with one hand tied behind my back, my left shoe tied to my right shoe, and playing with a football when I was on offense.
Well, yeah, they have a shield generator, and they don't want to kill them either, as you know that they want the Queen to sign the treaty to invade.
Every droid but R2-D2 gets shot off the surface of the ship like bottles on Kid Rock's fence. R2, though, that f***er is indestructible, of course.
Or R2-D2 just happens to be the only droid that didn't get shot off, and that's what leads to him becoming one of the most iconic characters in all of Star Wars? You're only saying this because this is a prequel, and you know who he is. But if you're watching these in chronological order, you wouldn't even notice.
And that's saying nothing about these droids' crazy ability to drive on the exterior surface of a moving spaceship.
Because apparently magnets aren't a thing at CinemaSins headquarters.
I want that treaty signed.
Why does it matter if the treaty gets signed or not? Aren't you evil? Do you care about laws and
Just because he's evil doesn't mean he doesn't care about the law. You still have to appease it if you want to do your evil deeds. And you're talking about Darth Flippin' Sidious, the guy who had to convince the entire galaxy that the Jedi are traitors, and that's why they decided to transform the Republic into the Empire. He understands that he can't just do evil things without being punished.
I want to know how holograms actually work. Is there a booth you step inside? From the Emperor's perspective, does he see these two guys sitting down as holograms on opposite sides of a table? If so, what at this table is broadcasting them? Also, what's up with this hologram technology, that Darth Maul could be standing a few feet behind his master and not be seen, but step forward and reveal himself?
And now, here's the beginning of the ridiculous hologram sins. He asks all these questions as if anyone actually cares about this. Even if I hated this movie, I would still be thinking, okay, you're just trying to find problems at this point.
An extremely well put together little droid, Your Highness.
The Queen has time to recognize droid heroism.
R2-D2, Your Highness.
Yay, R2-D2! I remember that little guy. I completely forget that the first 28 minutes of this movie was about trade disputes.
Sinning the movie for rightfully celebrating the actions of R2-D2, the most based character of all time.
We're on a stealth mission, so let's bring the slow-ass droid and the clumsy court jester Jar Jar. Brilliant!
I agree with you on bringing Jar Jar, but R2 helps Qui-Gon show Wada what parts they need for their ship.
Oh! Go!
Fine, even if this movie is for kids, even if Jar Jar was made for kids, no matter what excuse you give me, this stepping in scene is basically a metaphor for the whole franchise. Name one great kids movie that has a scene like this. Go ahead, I'm waiting.
Ice Age.
Are you an angel?
Thus began the least believable on-screen romance since Anakin and Padme in Attack of the Clones. Wait,
what's so unbelievable about this? Isn't attraction one of the first steps in romance? And you're literally playing a scene that shows Anakin calling her an angel.
if you subscribe to the brand new and totally insane internet theory that Jar Jar was originally intended to be a Yoda-like evil Jedi Master this whole time, how do you explain this Three's Company bull?
Listen, I don't entirely believe this theory either. It was fun for a little bit, but not anymore. However, I do remember people saying that Jar Jar was acting dumb, and that's part of his disguise to fool everyone that he's not a Sith. This could be seen as an example of that. Again, I'm not saying this theory is true or anything, I'm just saying this doesn't necessarily debunk it.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't! What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that?
This didn't work against Jabba, and it didn't work against this pissant. So if the Force is only good against the weak-minded, what good is it? It should be able to take down some smarter creatures too, if it's worth a damn.
Are you saying it's a sin that the Jedi mind trick doesn't work on every single living creature? Sir, if that's how it worked, then the entire story of Star Wars wouldn't have happened.
Wouldn't have lasted long anyways if I wasn't so good at building things.
Character backstory disguised as whining.
He's 9 years old. Do you know how whiny 9-year-olds are?
Is that Greedo in the background? Why can't that motherfucker be shooting his trigger-happy gun right now?
That's racist.
Chesko Saboba. Chiporko Umangisa.
Aren't you supposed to be cleaning the racks? How did you get out of your child labor obligations to go save Jar Jar?
The passage of time continues to confound CinemaSins.
This storm will slow them down.
Looks pretty bad.
It does? I mean, I hear wind sound effects and the picture is a tiny bit blurry, but as a viewer, I've been given no indication of a super serious sudden sandstorm or its severity.
Oh, really? How about this scene then?
We'll head back to our ship.
Is it far?
Anakin is allowed to walk around with Qui-Gon everywhere he goes now, because he saved the most annoying character in the movie from a fight. How these characters all end up together is hardly organic. Jar Jar does nothing except be oppressed, so they keep him. Anakin saves that asshole, so they keep him. Remember how Luke and Han became a team? It came out of need. These characters get to tag along because the script says so.
It actually does feel organic if you pay attention. Jar Jar wanted to help Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan find Ota Gunga after Qui-Gon saved him, and he also helped them navigate Naboo's planet core. Anakin immediately liked Padme, and after he saved Jar Jar, he was curious to learn more about them and where they came from.
Come on, I'll take you to my place.
Because sandstorms are very, very dangerous, and this sandstorm happened to coincide with a time when the Jedi and company were humoring a little boy tour guide, the rest of all the Star Wars can happen.
You can use this exact same logic with A New Hope. If C-3PO and R2-D2 didn't just happen to be captured by Jawas, and then just happen to be bought by Luke's family, who just happened to know Obi-Wan, the same man R2 was looking for, then the entire original trilogy would have never happened. Not only that, Qui-Gon later comments that he believes this is the will of the Force, so that explains that.
We must survive on our own.
Jar Jar misses the apple, but he's definitely an asshole.
Can we just slow down the footage here? Does it look like Jar Jar missed the apple to you?
He was meant to help you.
Thank God Jar Jar got curious about some bullshit, accidentally started a fight with some asshole, and Anakin was around to save him, even though I still don't think he cleaned those racks.
You're pointing out coincidences again? We already went through this, don't make me bring it up again.
What if this plan fails, Master?
By the way, movie sticks Obi-Wan on this ship, doing nothing, the entire time on Tatooine. That's exactly what we wanted to see the badass character from the original trilogy do, now didn't we?
Obi-Wan is a Padawan right now, and he also has to guard the Queen. This is more Qui-Gon's movie anyway.
There's something about this boy.
Why can't they Jedi talk to each other? Why do they need these little radios?
Because they have these radios? Why bother using up energy to just chat when you can use these things?
Who was his father?
There was no father.
Wow, way to Jesus Christ the Anakin character. You know what would have been way more interesting? Almost any mysterious character from the galaxy impregnating you and then leaving. You could have even made that a big surprise reveal in the third movie somehow. Anything but this.
That's kind of exactly what happens in the third movie. Darth Plagueis wanted to create life, and it basically backfired by creating Anakin to help bring balance to the Force. And yeah, I know there's that Darth Vader comic that says apparently Palpatine intentionally impregnated Shmi, and while that's a cool idea, I think Lucas's idea is much better and more fitting for this story.
35-second long conversation about midichlorians is 36 seconds too long.
That's the wrong scene, my guy.
I need a midichlorian count.
Hey, remember when you watched the original trilogy and you thought, man, if I could believe in the Force, I could be a Jedi? Well, turns out Jedi creation depends on whether or not you have a lot of something really dumb called midichlorians in your bloodstream.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't mind the midichlorians. It's kind of been a thing since the original trilogy that some people are Force sensitive and some aren't. Luke can use the Force perfectly, but Han can't. The midichlorians simply explain why.
I'll wager my new racing pod against, say, the boy and his mother.
Oh, I see. Qui-Gon either knows for a fact that Anakin will win the race, or he's literally risking everything on a hunch. Either way, sin.
Qui-Gon is what a Jedi should be. He trusts in the will of the Force, believing that it wants Anakin off the planet so he can bring balance. Therefore, risking all of this is what he should do.
Qui-Gon practices the Jedi way and cheats at the dice throw. He should just use his Jedi powers to sabotage the race if he's going to subvert honesty anyway.
Again, Qui-Gon has complete faith in the Force that Anakin will be able to win. He's only doing this so he can free him and train him as a Jedi. In his eyes, this is what the Force wants. It's similar to how Christians do certain things because they believe God wants it.
I love how strange evil flying drones are able to wander this planet without anyone thinking it's weird or shady.
I'm fairly certain robots floating around are super common in this universe.
Sebulba sabotages Anakin's pod racer in front of thousands of spectators, yet no one sees a thing.
Judging by the fact that nobody cares about him literally killing other racers, I doubt they would care if someone did see this. And here's 10 sins for splitting this video into 2 parts. Didn't you literally criticize Mockingjay for doing exactly that?
Alien rat carcasses here! Get your alien rat carcasses here!
Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche.
Jabba does an impression of me watching a NASCAR race.
Yeah, I think this joke is kind of funny.
Our meeting was not a coincidence.
Yeah, it was. Look at the things that had to happen before they ran into Anakin. He had to stumble on Jar Jar on another planet, take him in, have him show them where his home was, get released by the Gungans, survive going through the Naboo core, have ship problems on the way to another planet, just happen to land on Tatooine, befriend the child slave of a guy who sold the part they needed, and then have Jar Jar accidentally get into a fight with a professional pod racer so Anakin could break it up. Even then, the kid just kind of joined him without an invite, and I still don't think he cleaned those racks.
For the 100th time, this isn't a sin of the movie. Yeah, it's all coincidental, but that's just how the story went. And again, you can see it as the will of the Force. That's what Qui-Gon believes, which is why he said this.
Qui-Gon and Anakin are already running long before they know a Sith is just about ready to attack.
In a deleted scene, as Qui-Gon and Anakin were leaving Mos Espa, Qui-Gon destroyed one of Darth Maul's probes, realized they were being tracked, and so decided to run to the ship as quickly as possible. However, it is a sin that this scene was cut, because in the final film, there really is no reason for them to be running here. I'm not going to sin you here, I just wanted to explain this.
Take off. Why doesn't Obi-Wan help Qui-Gon fight this guy? Neither of the Jedi are important for this ship. They just need to get Queen Amidala to the Senate. And later, the Jedi Council tells him to go investigate Darth Maul anyway, so why not now?
Did you seriously just ask why doesn't Obi-Wan leave the Queen unprotected to go fight someone? You even admit that they need to help her to get to Coruscant.
Padme will go from maternal figure in this film to sexual partner in the next. Like that. And that is creepy as f***.
You know there was a 10-year gap in between films, right? And Padme is only 5 years older than Anakin, so this isn't that big of an issue.
Space is cold.
It sure is, but aren't you on a ship? Doesn't it have heat?
Anakin came from a desert planet with 2 flippin' suns. It's the hottest planet in the galaxy. So of course he wouldn't be used to immediately feeling any temperature that isn't hot.
I made this for you. I carved it out of a pore snippet.
When did you have time to do that? The total time Qui-Gon and everybody was down on the planet was like 3 days, and most of that time was spent fixing up your pod racer.
He did it while Qui-Gon was taking the parts to the ship after the race, but before he went back to pick him up. That presumably took a few hours, giving Anakin plenty of time to make this.
But I don't need this to remember you by.
Because we already have a creepy romantic connection that won't be spoken of aloud until you're old enough for me to see your Jabor snippet, if you know what I mean. Wink.
Jeremy says boner.
Many things will change when we reach the capital, Annie.
It's called puberty.
Coruscant. The entire planet is one big city.
Thanks, narrator.
And that's 2 instances of Jeremy yelling at the screen.
The courts take even longer to decide things than the Senate.
They do? Well,
I'm torn. On the one hand, I did chuckle at this joke, but on the other one, I don't like that he's again admitting that he's not paying attention to this movie. Should I add a sin or remove one? How about both?
It took 1 hour and 24 minutes for Yoda to even show up in this movie. You want to figure out where things went wrong? It's having Jedi play politics and only using their powers to smash up fucking robots. Why didn't this movie start at a secret Jedi training ground? Something kind of like Dagobah, where Darth Maul comes in and assassinates a Jedi Master played by Delroy Lindo or someone else 90s, and start the movie with that instead of tax law.
Probably because you're not the one who wrote this movie.
A boy. His cells have the highest concentration of midichlorians I have seen in a life form.
Therefore, he's a good guy, I think.
Technically, it could be either good or bad. It just depends on the choices he makes. Which is, you know, the entire point of this trilogy?
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
No, because Star Wars would never do anything as stupid as having some ancient prophecy muddy the waters, right? Who makes these prophecies?
The Wills. But more importantly, how does this prophecy muddy the waters?
I know you want me to say something about the ET delegation down here, but I'm much more concerned about the Oogie Boogie delegation up here absolutely butchering the Running Man.
Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche.
Do not defy the council, Master, not again.
Movie hints at a much better movie that we'll never get to see.
Or that's exactly the movie we're watching right now. Qui-Gon dies and then gets his wish that Anakin is to be trained. He does defy the council in this movie, even beyond the grave.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
Well, wouldn't you be too? Jedi Council makes it out like loving your mom is bad, assholes.
That's not what Yoda is saying at all. Love is perfectly fine. Obi-Wan felt sadness when Qui-Gon died, for example. The problem is loving too much to the point of obsession. That's why Anakin ultimately turns to the dark side, because he chose to sacrifice the entire Jedi Order just to save his wife from potentially dying.
Samuel L. Jackson, just grateful to be in these f***ing movies, will now stroke his chin knowingly.
Sending this bad
No, he will not be trained.
Yoda just went on a rant about how fear leads to the dark side, but isn't the Council practicing fear by not allowing the training of Anakin?
No, they're simply being smart by not training someone that could potentially use that fear to harm others. That's like saying it's fearful to go into a jungle full of lions because you know you'll most likely die. It's just common sense.
Come on, R2.
There's no chance you can roll up the high edge of this platform, but we'll cut away before that so no one will ever know.
Didn't you straight up acknowledge earlier that you're aware of what happens in the other two prequel movies? So surely you know R2 can just turn on his jets and hover onto it, right?
Did something happen to the blockade? Remember, absolutely nothing changed since they left, except the Trade Federation has a tighter stronghold on the planet, so why the free reign to fly into Naboo all of a sudden?
Probably because they want the Queen to return so she can sign the treaty, and even detect the ship landing, so it's not like they don't know they're here now.
Ancient statues that are never explained and have no bearing on the plot accidentally inspire Lost.
Arbitrary TV reference.
We can enter the city using the secret passages on the waterfall side.
Secret passages ex machina.
Jeremy just called secret passageways a deus ex machina. What's even dumber than that is that this plan is being formed by the Queen of Naboo. You don't think she knows the palace inside and out?
Somehow George Lucas manages to rip off the never-ending story.
Arbitrary movie reference.
Prequel scream.
Sending the Wilhelm scream.
Well, Darth Maul is a criminally underused badass, and Duel of the Fates is one of the finest pieces of film score ever written, so we'll take 3 sins off here without looking back.
Good job. You actually did the right thing removing sins for a movie you obviously dislike. For me, this is the best lightsaber duel in the entire saga. The Mustafar fight is close, but I personally prefer this one. Take a sin off.
I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
Yeah, try that, asshole kid we hate, who we already know is going to survive whatever bullshit we see. Try that.
Sinning this line.
Birds!
Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche.
We're about to see our first true scene of suspense in the movie, but what the hell is this place? This is some Galaxy Quest here.
This whole setting is the power generator of the entire city. Wikipedia says that they are laser doors meant to protect a large reserve tank that takes the excess plasma.
Your occupation here has ended.
After her! This one's a decoy!
Look, I know you want to make these Trade Federation guys half-wits, but do they really think the real Queen would just run out in the open like this to save a decoy?
Or maybe he thinks he fell into a trap?
Too bad you don't have the 1,000 other ships that were forming the blockade earlier. Oh well.
Well, they do. But that doesn't matter, because this specific ship was controlling the battle droids down on Naboo, and Padme just captured the Viceroy. With that done, they can then call the Republic and have them get rid of this blockade.
Darth Maul taunts Obi-Wan here, but wouldn't it be pretty easy for him to kill Obi-Wan by, like, spear throwing his lightsaber 5 feet down into Obi-Wan's face? I mean, where's he gonna go to dodge that shit?
Couldn't Obi-Wan just use the Force to push it out of the way if he did that? I mean, he literally uses it to grab Qui-Gon's lightsaber anyway.
Darth Maul stands perfectly still while Obi-Wan does all this bullshit to kill him. Also, the coolest character this trilogy has gets killed like a little bitch in the first movie.
Technically he's not dead. You made this video in 2015 after the Clone Wars had been cancelled, and that show brought him back to life. That was the only TV show that Disney kept as canon, and then Solo came out 3 years later and further confirmed Maul survived this fall.
Agree with you, the Council does.
The Jedi Council changes their mind about training Anakin because he lucked out destroying the droid ship. They still sense fear in him, right? Nothing else has changed, right?
You have completely misunderstood this scene. You're right that nothing's changed with fear residing within Anakin, but Obi-Wan has made it perfectly clear that he will train Anakin with or without the Council's permission. Yoda knows this, and so figured he should let him be trained, since there's no point if Obi-Wan will train him anyway.
What will happen to me now?
You turn into Hayden Christensen, of course.
Jeremy yells at the screen, cliche.
What will you have?
my old Padawan.
This is just the beginning.